If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
You are listening to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. And today we are finally doing a deep dive into the Long Island serial killer case. This has been long requested. And for those that don't know, or for those that have been watching the news, there has finally been an arrest made in the case. So we'll be going over that. We'll be going over unofficially linked bodies, what it all means for the case. And as always, whether or not this guy, all of these killings are attributed to this guy, whether or not a certain percentage of them are accurate, a certain percentage are not, none are, all are, or if he's even responsible for plenty more that haven't been officially linked. And we do all that, obviously, in typical MINDSHOCK fashion with logic and reason at the forefront, unlike any other true crime podcast. If you want to help support the podcast, help logic and reason come back to a world where it is quickly going extinct. I mean, as in this case, you already have goofs coming out of the woodwork claiming this guy's 100% guilty. All of them are attributed to him. He didn't do any others. And everything is exactly as reported on the idiot box. No shortage of these Dunning-Kruger goofs online. Obviously, we don't do that on MINDSHOCK. Logic and reason rule the day here. You can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also support the channel by becoming a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure you're subscribed, like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. So, let's jump right in here. Let's just do a quick breakdown, then we'll break down the timeline, and then we'll get deeper. The Gilgo Beach serial killings. A series of murders between 1996 and 2011 in which the remains of up to 18 people were found in Gilgo Beach on the south shore of Long Island. Most of the known victims were sex workers who advertised on Craigslist. The perpetrator in the case is also known as the Long Island serial killer. The victims' remains were found over a period of months in 2010 and 2011 after the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert resulted in a police search of the area along the Ocean Parkway near the remote beach towns of Gilgo and Oak Beach in Suffolk County. The remains of 4 victims designated the Gilgo 4 were found within a quarter mile of each other near the Gilgo Beach in December 2010. 6 more sets of remains were found in March and April 2011 in Suffolk and Nassau counties. Police believe the latter sets of remains predate the 4 bodies found in December 2010. Gilbert's remains were found a year after the remains of the Gilgo 4 were discovered. Her cause of death remains contested, with police claiming accidental drowning, while an independent autopsy determined possible strangulation. And I just want to say here, I mean, independent autopsies should not only always be allowed, but demanded and part of protocol. Because obviously there's issues with not just corruption, but incompetence. So there should definitely be independent autopsies performed by third parties not affiliated with police or government in any way. On July 13, 2023, a resident of Massapequa Park was arrested in Midtown Manhattan as a suspect in the case. He was charged the following day in the murders of 3 of the Gilgo 4, Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartholomew, and Amber Costello. And I think he's named as a strong suspect in one more, but what's curious is they didn't charge him for all the others, or at least not yet. I guess they're still looking for evidence. It's actually kind of curious because in the wiki, they're still not using his name for whatever reason. I mean, I guess, I don't know, they didn't update it. Rex Hewerman is the guy they arrested. What's also curious in the arrest video, they're clearly keeping tabs on him. They arrest him in the middle of the street in public. Like, what if he had a gun? He could just start shooting. There could be a big shootout with tons of casualties. Like, it's kind of weird. Why didn't they just tail him to his house or wherever he was going, where there was not a lot of people around? That's very curious. But Anyway, police investigations. Bodies discovered. The first discovery of human remains was made by the side of Ocean Parkway in Oak Beach on December 11, 2010. The investigation was prompted by the search for Shanann Gilbert, a 24-year-old woman who had disappeared in the area in May that year after fleeing from a client's home and making a 23-minute-long emergency call to 911 saying, quote, "They are trying to kill me," end quote. They? A month after her disappearance, the Suffolk County Police Department's Missing Persons Bureau asked Officer John Malia to search for Gilbert with his trained cadaver dog, a German Shepherd named Blue. Over the course of the summer 2010, Malia unsuccessfully searched the gated beach community where Gilbert had last been seen. And then obviously, of course, Huerman has not been charged with Gilbert's death, but the officer made a new attempt at a search on December 11th, 2010, staying close to the shoulder of the parkway. Malia based his choice of search area on FBI data indicating that dumped bodies are frequently found close to roadways. Despite thick vegetation and a light layer of snow, Malia's cadaver dog alerted to a scent which the pair tracked to a skeleton in a disintegrating burlap bag. The remains were later ID'd as Melissa Bartholomew's. Police discovered 3 additional bodies while searching the scene for further evidence. The bodies of the 4 victims, Maureen Brainard, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Watermelon, and Amber Costello, were found approximately 500 feet or 150 meters from each other. In March 2011, partial remains of Jessica Taylor were found along Ocean Parkway. 8 years earlier, in 2003, other parts of Taylor's remains had been found in Manorville, a town in Suffolk County. That's kind of weird. The next month, in April 2011, police discovered 3 additional sets of remains. An unidentified female toddler, an unidentified Asian person, and Valerie Mack, partial remains of whom, like those of Jessica Taylor, had been found in Manorville years earlier in November 2000. So that really does seem... It does seem like too much of a coincidence there. 2 more bodies were found in Nassau County. An unidentified woman whose partial remains had been previously been found on Fire Island in 1996, and an unidentified woman with a distinctive tattoo of peaches who was later found to be the mother of the unidentified toddler found in Suffolk County. On May 9th, 2011, police speculated that because of similarities in the cases, Valerie Mack, who at the time was unidentified, and Jessica Taylor may have been murdered by a second separate killer. Wait, why would they have the similarities separate? Wouldn't that mean there would be a single... What? On November 29, 2011, police announced that they believed one person to be responsible for all 10 murders, and that the perpetrator is almost certainly from Long Island. The single killer theory stems from common characteristics between the condition of the remains and forensic evidence related to the body. Unless, of course, he's not working alone, because if there's 2 or 3 of them, then that would account for that as well, as opposed to 2 completely separate serial killers who don't know each other, who just happen to have the same dumping ground. I mean, that wouldn't necessarily be unheard of. For those that don't know, I mean, it's typically reported that there's at least 1 serial killer operating per state in the United States. I don't remember where I heard that. I do not have a source for that. I really can't remember. But just looking at all-time serial killers per state, apparently New York and California have the most. New York 18, California 15, Texas 8. I'm actually kind of surprised. Washington State is only 4. Washington State is kind of known for serial killers. That's weird. Illinois 7. Indiana 6, Ohio 7. Louisiana 6. Those are basically the top ones. In U.S., the total number of serial killers, or at least known serial killers, 152. The total number of victims, 12,746. Now, what's curious, how did they get that number? Because I don't know if they're alleging 152 serial killers killed 12,746 people. I mean, and this is from wisevoter.com. Because according to those numbers, the average serial killer would have killed 83.85 people. which is obviously not the case. So that means there's just countless unknown serial killers. On TrueCrimeWire.com, article by Lawrence Lisk, July 14th, 2023, mentions that there's 5 active serial killers in the U.S. Oh, he just named the 5 most prolific. But he states here, you might be surprised to learn that criminalists and FBI profilers believe that there are around 2,000 active serial killers in the U.S. alone. That's kind of crazy. I don't know. That seems kind of high, doesn't it? That's crazy. That's a lot more than 1 per state. I mean, obviously, there's that old comment. I don't know where this originated. Supposedly, I mean, basically everybody is going to run in or be in the presence of at least 1 serial killer throughout their lifetime. Not that they're going to be a victim, not that they're going to be attacked in any way, simply being present, whether it's running into them at a coffee shop, at a restaurant, walking by them in a hallway somewhere. Statistically, it might actually be higher than that, but supposedly, at least one, unknowingly, you're going to at least walk by or maybe even talk to at least 1 serial killer in your lifetime. I don't know where this guy got the stat of active serial killers being over 2,000 or around 2,000. That seems kind of high and kind of crazy. Now, what does active mean? They killed somebody like 5 years ago, and they're going to kill somebody, maybe next year. So it's not like they're out there killing every day, because then they'd get caught probably. So I don't know exactly. Active means uncaught. That doesn't necessarily mean they're killing someone every week. It might be once every year, once every 5 years. So I don't know. That's kind of weird. So Scientific American stated that there's roughly between 25 and 50 serial killers in the U.S. right now, killing about 150 people a year. This, of course, are the known ones, because obviously missing people that are not known to be... I mean, obviously, a certain percentage of missing people have been killed by serial killers. Obviously, we don't know the exact number, but this is only known. So between 25 and 50, so that would mean, that's about 1 per state. I don't know where that other guy got 2,000 from. That's insane. But based on the number of theorized serial killer victims, that's actually kind of... That would make sense. At least they're not caught, maybe if they stopped killing, but... Yeah, I mean, trying to make sense of these stats are... according to Scientific American, it also states that roughly 17% are women. And of an average lifespan of 75 years, a person will have encountered at least 3 to 5 serial killers. Not 1. I mean, again, if we're looking at these astronomical numbers, I mean, especially if you live in a city or spend a significant time in cities, maybe. I mean, I don't know how... serial killers are based in cities too. Rural areas also, but if you really live in the middle of absolute nowhere where the crime is 0 and there's nobody to kill, I mean, obviously you might not be running into a serial killer unless you work at a gas station or something. But yeah, I mean, these stats are pretty haunting no matter how you look at it. But let's continue here. June 2011, Suffolk County Police announced a $25,000 reward for info leading to the arrest in the Long Island murders. Gilbert's remains were located in Oak Beach, December 2011, 19 months after her disappearance. The cause of death is contested. And of course, police would obviously lean accidental death, drowning, suicide, like literally anything and everything other than having to do a proper investigation. We see this all the time. Not all departments, obviously, before the triggered goofs jump on me for that. But just far too often, obviously 1 is too often because all victims deserve justice, but far too often, police departments always lean in the direction of non-foul play. FBI involvement. December 10, 2015, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Tim Siney announced that the FBI had officially joined the investigation. The announcement came 1 day after former police chief James Burke was indicted for civil rights violation and conspiracy. Oh, wow. Coincidence theorist. There you go. Yet another police chief indicted for conspiracy. Aren't conspiracies just all unfounded allegations? I mean, coincidence theorists are quite a clueless bunch. Burke, who resigned from the department in October 2015, was reported to have blocked FBI involvement in Gilgo Beach cases for years. And why would that be? Does anybody have any theories on this? Again, I'm not alleging that he's responsible anyway. We're going to get to him later, but Yeah, I mean, that's a curiosity. The FBI had previously assisted in the search for victims, but had never officially been part of the investigation. November 2016, Burke was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison for assault and conspiracy. That seems kind of light. John Bitch Ralph named as a suspect. September 12, 2017, Suffolk County Prosecutor Robert Biancavilla from the County District Attorney's Office announced that John Bitralph, a carpenter from Manorville, Long Island, was a suspect in at least one of the murders. Bitroff had been convicted in May of that year of the murders of two sex workers in 93 and 94, so it seems like a solid suspect, no doubt. 2020 release of evidence to the public. January 16, 2020, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Geraldine Hart released images of a belt found at this crime scene with the letters HM or WH, depending on the orientation of the belt, embossed in black leather. The belt had been found during the initial investigation near Ocean Parkway and Gilgo Beach. Police believe that the belt was handled by the perpetrator and it had not belonged to any of the victims. That's curious on why they believe that, though. So he just sloppily left evidence. The police revealed few details about the belt's evidentiary value and would not comment on exactly where it had been found. It was also announced that the new scientific evidence was being used in the investigation, and they had launched GilgoNews.com, a website enabling the department to share news and receive tips regarding the investigation. Identification of Valerie Mack through genetic genealogy. June 2019, a proposal was made to use genetic genealogy to identify the unidentified victims and possibly the killer in the Gilgo Beach case. On May 28, 2020, Jane Doe number 6 was identified as Valerie Mack, who also went by the name of Melissa Taylor. I mean, both those names seem kind of common. The Gilgo 4, victims discovered December 2010. Maureen Brainard Barnes. Brainard Barnes of Norwich, Connecticut, was 25 when she disappeared. She was last seen July 9th, 2007, saying that she planned to, quote, to spend the day in New York City, and, quote, she was never seen again. Brainard Barnes, a mother of two, worked as a paid escort via Craigslist to pay the mortgage on her house. She had been out of the sex industry for 7 months, but returned to the work in order to pay her bills after receiving an eviction notice. Her body was found in December 2010. Shortly after the disappearance, a friend of Brainard Barnes, Sarah Carnes, received a phone call from a man on an unfamiliar number. The man claimed that he had just seen Brainard Barnes and that she was alive and staying at a whorehouse in Queens. He refused to ID himself and could not tell Carnes the location of the house. He told Carnes he would call back and give her the address, but never called again. Carnes said that the man had no discernible New York or Boston accent. At the time of her disappearance, she was working at a Super 8 motel in Manhattan. On the night of July 9, 2007, she called a friend in Connecticut and told her that she was planning on meeting a client outside of the hotel. Like many of the victims, Brainard Barnes was very petite, 4'11", 105 pounds. She had been strangled. Melissa Bartholomew. Bartholomew, 24, of Erie County, New York, went missing July 12, 2009. That's curious. He likes July. June, July. She had been living in the Bronx in New York and working as an escort through Craigslist. On the night she went missing, she met with a client, deposited $900 in her bank account, and attempted to call an old boyfriend, but did not get through. Beginning 1 week later and lasting for 5 weeks, her teenage sister Amanda received a series of vulgar, mocking, and insulting calls from a man who may have been the killer using Melissa Bartholomew's cell phone. The caller asked if Amanda was a whore like her sister. The calls became increasingly disturbing and eventually culminated in the caller telling Amanda that her sister was dead and that he was going to watch her rot. Wow, what a psycho. Police traced some of the calls to Madison Square Garden, Midtown Manhattan, and Massapequa, but were unable to determine who was making them. Bartholomew's mother noted that there were a lot of calls to Manorville from her daughter's phone around the time of her disappearance. In September 2017, John Bitralph, a carpenter from that town, convicted of 2 other murders, was named as a suspect in the Gilgo Beach cases. Bartholomew was 4'10" and 95 pounds. She had been strangled. Megan Waterman. Waterman, 22, of South Portland, Maine, went missing June 6, 2010, after placing advertisements on Craigslist as an escort. The previous day, she had told her 20-year-old boyfriend that she was going out and would call him later. At the time of her disappearance, she was staying at a motel in Hapagee, New York, 15 miles northeast of Gilgo Beach. Her body was recovered December 2010. Waterman was a mother of one and had become a victim of sex trafficking. Waterman was 5'5". She had been strangled. Wait, victim of sex trafficking? Wait, who is her boyfriend? Let's get some more details on this. She was being trafficked, so this is pressherald.com. So she was being trafficked for sex by her boyfriend. Wow, that's messed up. Okay, so then we have Amber Lynn Costello. Costello, 27, of West Babylon, New York, a small town 10 miles north of Gilgo Beach, was a sex worker and heroin user who went missing September 2nd, 2010. That night, she reportedly went to meet a stranger who had called her several times and offered $1,500 for her services. Born in Charlotte and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, Costello was living in West Babylon, New York when she disappeared. Her family believed that she was in a residential drug rehabilitation center, and so she was not immediately reported missing when she stopped responding to messages and phone calls. Prior to moving to West Babylon, Costello had been living with her second husband in Clearwater, Florida, and was working as a waitress. A strong student, Costello's drug addiction began when she was a teenager. She had been sexually assaulted by a neighbor when she was 6 years old. Costello was 4'11" and weighed approximately 100 pounds. She had been strangled. So clearly there's a pattern in terms of, the timing. So September is a little off. All the other three are June, July. But technically, September 2nd, that's before Labor Day. So that's technically all summer season. And they all have very similar profiles. Now, the first thing that stands out to me, again, so this is via Craigslist, or mostly through Craigslist. Is it possible, again, either through anonymous online forums or otherwise, on the internet, dark web, whatever, why do so many people think it's implausible for serial killers to communicate and brag to each other? Why wouldn't there be more than one serial killer independently, that might be a stretch, especially if they're using the same dumping ground. Because, assume this, let's say you're a scumbag serial killer. If you don't want to get caught and you belong to, let's say, a forum online of just anonymous serial killers bragging, etc., because people brag about everything. Like sports, collector, whatever, comic book people. Literally any interest or hobby you can have. The internet, a lot of it is just bragging, not just, and maybe communicating and asking for tips or whatever, but a lot of it's bragging. Why wouldn't criminals brag as well? Obviously anonymously. So, especially on the dark web, obviously, I don't know if people are going to be doing this in, on public Facebook posts, obviously. But maybe forums where they use code words, or the dark web, whatever, where they can't be tracked. If any MindShock listeners know a lot about the dark web, that's, I don't really want to stare into that abyss because I don't want it to stare back into me. So there's only so much of this I'll cover on true crime simply for that reason. A lot of it's just very, very dark. So I really don't know that much about the dark web. I did a podcast on it just in terms of just general, crime activity and arrests made in conjunction with it. But I've never actually utilized it, so I don't know that much about it, but I'm assuming you can be anonymous easily. But even on the regular internet, again, anonymous forums, using proxies and code words and all that stuff, I'm sure many criminals can easily communicate with each other. So why wouldn't serial killers be bragging to each other? And why wouldn't a serial killer who doesn't want to get caught, why wouldn't they use the same dumping ground as another serial killer bragging about kills? That way, if some of the bodies are discovered, you could just blame the other guy. They wouldn't necessarily be onto you. Again, just a thought. Again, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. This is MindShock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But I just think it's weird that, a lot of coincidence theorists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd, even people that have supposedly been following true crime for a while, they're just allergic to logic. I'm not saying that happened in this case here. I'm just saying in general That would seem like a very plausible scenario. But let's continue here. Additional victims discovered in March, April 2011. 4 more sets of remains were discovered March 29th and April 4th, 2011. So this is kind of outside the regular timeline, the summer timeline. All of the remains were found in another area of the parkway near Oak Beach and Gilgo Beach within 2 miles and to the east of those found in December 2010. The newly discovered victims were Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, an unidentified woman designated Jane Doe number 3, or Peaches, and an unidentified toddler who was the daughter of Peaches. Suffolk police subsequently expanded the search area up the Nassau County border looking for more victims. The 2 further sets of remains were discovered April 11th, 2011, after the search expanded into Nassau County. They were found about 1 mile apart, approximately 5 miles west of those found in December. One set of remains belonged to a victim now thought to be a transgender woman. Designated Asian male, police said that the victim had been dead for between 5 and 10 years. The other remains were those of Jane Doe number 7, whose partial remains had been discovered on Fire Island in 1996. So, what a tangled web here indeed. I mean, this is curious. Huh. Yeah, this is curious. So, some of these sets are kind of lumped together and some are not. What does everybody make of that? And then, of course, Jane Doe number 7 on the other side. Yeah, this is definitely weird. This is definitely weird. So does this point to just a single guy? And then also, what's up with the toddler? I mean, the toddler, it doesn't quite match the profile. Was the toddler simply with Peaches at the time? Because it doesn't seem like, this isn't like a specific child killer. So was that just a weird extenuating circumstance for the serial killer where he felt the need to kill a toddler, unless there was some kind of an accident and there was no intention to kill the toddler? Or is that just unrelated to all these other ones? I mean, obviously kind of hard to say, but they're just so close together. Identified: Valerie Mack, Melissa Taylor, Manorville, Jane Doe, and Jane Doe number 6. Valerie Mack, 24, also known as Melissa Taylor. That's kind of curious. So, Jessica Taylor is another victim, and then Valerie Mack under the name Melissa Taylor, spelled the same way, Taylor. Huh. But Valerie Mack was living in Philadelphia, Jessica Taylor in Manhattan. But let's examine these. Valerie Mack, 24, also known as Melissa Taylor, was living in Philadelphia, working as an escort when she went missing in 2000. Like many of the victims, she was small in stature, approximately 5 feet, and weighing approximately 100 pounds. Now, for those that are saying that women are just small on average, the average female height is 5'4". Not 5 or 5'1", not 4'11", 5 or 5'1", or even 5'2". The average female height is 5'4" in the United States. So this can't just be written off as they just happen to all be 4'11" or 5. Or 4'10" even. Waterman stands out because she was 5'5". Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 4'11". Melissa Bartholomew, 4'10". Amber Lynn Costello, 4'11". Megan Waterman is 5'5". She's the one that stands out. Mac is 5 even. And it says approximately, so they don't really know. So she could have possibly been an inch or so shorter as well. Weighing approximately 100 pounds. Mac's partial remains were discovered and there's no weight listed for Megan Waterman. There's no weight listed. She's 5'5", so... Was she extremely skinny and also around 100 pounds, or was she a little bigger? Not known. Or at least not listed here. Mac's partial remains were discovered in Manorville November 19th, 2000, but were not ID'd until 2020. Her torso was found wrapped in garbage bags and dumped in the woods near the intersection of Halsey Manor Road and Mill Road, adjacent to a set of power lines and a nearby power line access road. What are they trying to tell us with that power line access road? A head, right foot, and hands found on April 4th, 2011 were at first determined to have belonged to an unidentified victim dubbed Jane Doe number 6. It was later determined that they belonged to the same woman whose torso had been found in 2000. Her right foot had been cut off high above the ankle, possibly to conceal an identifying mark or tattoo. On May 28, 2020, police announced that the remains had been identified as Valerie Mack, who had last been seen by family members in the spring or summer of 2000 in the area of Port Republic, New Jersey. The dismembered remains of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor were both disposed of in a similar manner and in the same part of Manorville, suggesting a link, not just a link, their last name. Well, if Valerie Mack is her real name, but it says also known as Melissa Taylor. What does that mean? Does that mean she changed her name legally, or was that like an escort name or something? And then is Jessica Taylor the real and escort name? I don't know. That's just the name there. It's kind of hard to write that off. And then all of them dismembered, and they were both dismembered in the same manner and in the same part of Manorville. Jessica Taylor, 20, was living in Manhattan when she went missing July 21st, 2003. On July 26, 2003, her naked, dismembered torso, missing its head and hands, were discovered 45 miles east of Gilgo Beach in Manorville, New York. These remains were ID'd by DNA analysis later that year. Taylor's torso was found atop a pile of wood scrap at the end of a paved access road off Halsey Manor Road, just north of where it crosses the Long Island Expressway. Plastic sheeting was found underneath the torso, and a tattoo on her body had been mutilated with a sharp instrument. So that does suggest they're trying to hide that. Further remains found on March 29, 2011 matched Taylor, including a skull, a pair of hands, and a forearm. She had worked in D.C. and Manhattan as a sex worker. Taylor was last seen working around the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan between July 18th and 22nd, 2003. Unidentified. September 20th, 2011, police released composite sketches of two of the unidentified victims, dubbed Asian Male and Jane Doe number 6, whose remains had been found in March and April 2011, as well as photos of jewelry found on the remains of a female toddler and her mother, Jane Doe number 3, found on April 4th and 11th, respectively. One of the sets of remains found in Nassau County April 11th was later ID'd as the mother of the toddler. Peaches, or Jane Doe number 3, April 11th, 2011, police in Nassau County discovered dismembered skeletal human remains inside a plastic bag near Jones Beach State Park. The victim was dubbed Jane Doe number 3. DNA analysis later positively indicated that the remains belonged to a woman whose torso had been found in Hempstead Lake State Park 14 years earlier. On June 28, 1997, the dismembered torso of an unidentified young African-American woman was found at Hempstead Lake State Park in the town of Lakeview, New York. The torso was found in a green plastic Rubbermaid container, which was dumped next to a road along the west side of the lake. Investigators reported that the victim had a tattoo of her on her left breast of a heart-shaped peach with a bite out of it and 2 drips falling from its core. December 2016, Peaches and Jane Doe number 3 were positively identified as being the same person. DNA analysis also identified Peaches as the mother of Baby Doe. She was found wearing gold jewelry similar to that of her daughter. Baby Doe, a third set of remains, the skeleton of a female toddler between 16 and 24 months of age, or by another account 1 to 4 years of age, was found on April 4th, 2011, about 250 feet away from the partial remains of Valerie Mack. The body was wrapped in a blanket and showed no visible signs of trauma. DNA tests determined that the child's mother was Jane Doe number 3, whose body was found 10 miles east near Jones Beach State Park. The toddler was reported to be African American and was wearing gold earrings and a gold necklace. Asian. Okay, actually, let's go to. There's actually a Wikipedia article here. Peaches, also known as the girl with the peach tattoo, or Jane Doe number 3, is an unidentified female whose torso was discovered June 28, 1997 in Lakeview, New York, near Hempstead Lake State Park. The cause of the woman's death is listed as homicide due to decapitation. As of 2023, she remains unidentified since her skull has yet to be found. The woman has a tattoo on her left breast depicting a heart-shaped peach with a bite taken out of it and 2 drops falling from its core, which resulted in her nickname. As of December 2016, additional skeletal remains found on Long Island in 2011 have been positively identified as belonging to Peaches, along with the remains of her child. As a result, Peaches is now linked to the Long Island serial killer as a potential victim. On June 28, 1997, a dismembered body was discovered by a hiker in a wooded area of Hempstead Lake State Park, Lakeview, New York. The head, both arms, and both legs below the knee were severed and have yet to be found. The torso was found on the west side of Lake Drive, about 200 yards north of Peninsula Boulevard, right by the McDonald Pond. She was found in a Rubbermaid container along with a red towel and a floral pillowcase. With no leads to the woman's identity, the police published a picture of the approximately 2-inch wide tattoo in a national tattoo magazine in the hopes of finding the artist who did the work. They received a call from Steve Cullen, a tattoo artist in Connecticut, who claimed he remembered giving the tattoo to a woman. Cullen said he remembered the customer as being a young black woman about 18 or 19 years old who was accompanied by 2 women, an aunt and a cousin. During the session, he also claimed she told him she was either from the Bronx or Long Island and that she was in Connecticut because she was having trouble with her boyfriend at the time. It is possible the woman had other tattoos on her arms or lower legs that the killer did not want found. December 13th, 2016, Long Island Press reported that local authorities has positively ID'd skeletal remains, formerly referred to as Jane Doe 3, found at Jones Beach State Park in 2011 as belonging to Peaches. Remains of a child were also found in 2011 east of Cedar Beach with DNA testing identifying Jane Doe 3 or Peaches as its mother. As a result of these findings, Peaches has now been linked to the Long Island serial killer as a potential early victim. And I don't know why they don't mention the distances, but Hempstead Lake State Park is about 11.4 miles by road from Jones Beach State Park. Obviously, that might not be the exact distance based on exactly where the remains were found, but yeah, it's kind of weird that most of these articles don't specifically mention the distance. I mean, it's not that close. I mean, it looks like some of these bodies have 2 to 3 locations. I mean, I wonder how common that is as well. I mean, usually killers have what, like 1 main dump site? Here, there could be 2 to 3 dump sites for the same body. Investigation, October 8th, 2022, the Mobile Police Department announced on its official Facebook page that the FBI was seeking relatives and friends of Elijah Lige Howell, or Howard, 1927 and 1963. Howard lived in Pritchard, Alabama with his wife Carrie and passed away in Mobile, Alabama, 63 while living with a Miss Lily Mae Wiggins Packer. The FBI believes his relatives may be able to assist in identifying Peaches and her child. A woman on her Facebook page simultaneously announced that the FBI reached out to her for a DNA test. The test revealed that she and Peaches were 4th cousins. An examination of the Howard family tree has indicated that Peaches might be the granddaughter of Sidney Howell Jr. and Iona Carter, the parents of Elijah Howell, or Howard/Howard. Interesting. So they do have leads. Cherries, related cases possibly. March 3rd, 2007, a dismembered torso was found in a suitcase in Harbor Island Park in Mamaroneck, Westchester County, New York. Investigators believe the victim was a heavy-set Hispanic or light-skinned African-American woman. Okay, slightly deviating from these, or maybe more than slightly. About 5'7" and 180 to 200 pounds. Yeah, this is this is the other end of the spectrum here. She had a tattoo of 2 red cherries on a green stem located on her right breast. Cherries, as she is referred to by law enforcement, was also decapitated and dismembered, although her original cause of death was a stab wound to the torso. Unlike Peaches, investigators found both of Cherry's legs, which washed up on the shore of Cablevision owner James Dolan's beachfront estate in Oyster Bay, New York. Inside the suitcase, investigators found a pair of gray Champion sweatpants, a tan or cream-colored long-sleeved shirt by Voice, and a red camisole bearing Spanish-language labels. The dark blue or black suitcase is sold exclusively at Walmart stores. Police also found small scraps of paper tucked away in the crevices of the suitcase. When pieced together, it looks like a calendar with the Spanish word cinco and the phrase begin to live. Police claim that the torso floated onto the beach as storm-fed floods hit the region. It could have originated from almost anywhere. Yeah, the tattoos look kind of similar, but... Okay, let's move on to Asian male. The body of a young Asian male who had died from blunt force trauma was also discovered April 4th, 2011... at Gilgo Beach, very close to where the first 4 sets of remains had been discovered in December 2010. Is it do they really know when they were placed there, though? Because I know this is really tough, but if these remains have been moved back and forth, and is it possible... Yeah, that's tough. The victim was found wearing woman's clothing and may possibly have been a transgender woman. The victim was between 17 and 23 years of age, 5'6" in height, missing 4 teeth, and may have had a musculoskeletal disorder which could affect gait. The victim had been dead between 5 and 10 years. In September 2011, police released a male composite sketch of the victim. Jane Doe number 7, Fire Island Jane Doe. A human skull and several teeth were recovered April 11th, 2011 at Tobay Beach. These remains were linked through DNA testing to a set of severed legs found in a garbage bag on Fire Island 15 years earlier, April 20th, 96. Jane Doe number 7's remains were the second set to be discovered in Nassau County, April 11, 2011. Jane Doe number 7 had a surgical scar on her left leg. Discovery of Gilbert's body. December 13th, 2011. Police announced that the remains of Gilbert had been found in a marsh about half a mile from where she had disappeared. A week earlier, some of her clothing and belongings had been discovered in the same vicinity. Gilbert was last seen banging on a resident's door and screaming for help before running off into the night. Gilbert made an emergency 911 call that night saying that she feared for her life. Police have said the death of Gilbert, a woman whose disappearance triggered the search during which the first set of bodies was found, is not related to the Long Island serial killer case. Gilbert's now deceased mother, Mary, however, strongly advocated for the theory that Gilbert had been murdered by a serial killer. Well, what's curious is, because, Gilbert isn't really found that close to all the other victims. He's like on the complete other side. Then again, if the Gilgo Beach area is the dump site, would... So she was found a half mile from where she disappeared. So would the serial killer... would a serial killer using that general area as a dump site, would they also be killing in that general area? Probably not, right? I don't know. So it's obviously, it's very plausible it really isn't related, and there's just other scumbags in the area, serial killer or not, just people looking to harm. Who knows what the initial plan was, then she ends up dead. Now, if there is some kind of conspiracy involving police, we'll get to that, but, we will get to that. Let's just recap the timeline real quick. 96 is Jane Doe number 7, partial remains found on Fire Island, April 20th, 96, Fire Island, Jane Doe. June 28th, 97 is Peaches, partial remains found at Hempstead Lake State Park. Spring-summer 2000, Valerie Mack is last seen by family members. November 19th, 2000, Valerie Mack's partial remains found in Manorville. July 2003, Jessica Taylor last seen on the 26th, partial remains found in Manorville. In 2007, July 9th, Maureen Brainard Barnes last seen. July 2007, friend of Brainard Barnes, Sarah Carnes, receives a phone call from a man claiming that he had just seen Brainard Barnes and that she was alive and staying at a whorehouse in Queens. July 10th, 2009, Melissa Bartholomew last seen. August 2009, Amanda Bartholomew, sister of Melissa, receives a series of vulgar, mocking, and insulting calls from a man using Bartholomew's cell phone. The caller eventually tells Amanda that her sister is dead. So there's a pattern here, in July 2007 and July 2009, of phone calls to friends or family members. All right, now we go May 2nd, 2010. Shannon Gilbert makes a panicked phone call to 911 at 4:51 a.m. after fleeing a client's house in Oak Beach. She bangs on the doors of several neighboring houses and disappears. And she said they were trying to kill me. So if this is related, is there more than one killer? Do they chop up the bodies and one killer has one dump site, the other killer picks another dump site? Is that how they did this? Or if it's not related to these serial killers, then it's simply, I don't know, some scumbags called her and there were more than one of them, possibly more than two. I mean, she said they, right? And then she runs away from these psychos. And, I mean, you know what would be kind of crazy? If these psychos weren't looking, they didn't kill her. She ran away from them and another serial killer just happened to be the area that killed her, who's not the Long Island serial killer, because why would he be killing that close to the dump site? I don't know, just going through all the different theories here. So that same year, June 6th, about a month later, Megan Waterman last seen. Oh, that's curious. September 2nd that year, Amberlyn Costello last seen. Oh, I didn't know that timeline was that close. Re-examining that. May 2nd to June 6th. Yeah, that does open the door to a possible connection. Still nothing really solid, but that's curious because, yeah, that's within a month. So, yeah, about a month. December 11th, 2010, Melissa Bartholomew's remains are found. December 13th, 2010, Waterman, Costello, and Brainard Barnes' remains are found. Yeah, this timeline really does your head in, doesn't it? 2011, March 29th, 2011, Jessica Taylor's further partial remains found at Gilgo. So her first set of remains were found in Manorville. So Taylor's remains... So her head and hands were found in Gilgo, torso miles away in Manorville with Jane Doe number 6. And Jane Doe number 6 with her head and hands, but Jane Doe number 6 torso was in Manorville. Wow. Yeah, this is tough. April 4th, 2011, remains found of Valerie Mack Baby Doe, the 16 to 24-month-old daughter of Peaches, and an Asian male. April 11th, 2011, Peaches, Jane Doe number 3, further partial remains found Jones Beach State Park. April 11th, 2011, Fire Island Jane Doe number 7, further partial remains found at Tobay Beach. So the original remains were found in 96 on Fire Island. And then April 2011, partial remains found at Tobay Beach. December 13th, 2011, Shannon Gilbert's remains found in a marsh at Oak Beach. December 2016, Peaches and Jane Doe number 3 are positively ID'd as being the same person. September 2017, John Bitrolf, a carpenter from Manorville, convicted of the murders of 2 other prostitutes, is named as a suspect in the Gilgo Beach cases. Bitrolf had been convicted of murdering Rita Tangretti and Colleen McNamee, whose bodies were found in 93 and 94. Now, Rita Tangretti... Her body was dumped pretty close to where she was last seen. She was last seen walking the Montauk Highway, 2 miles from where she was found. But this was all the way back in 93, her remains were discovered. So quite a gap there in time. McNamee was 94. There were tiny particles that resembled wood chips found on McNamee's body. And Bitrolf worked as a carpenter throughout his adult life. Now, the new arrest of Rex Heuermann, this guy is an architect. So we have a carpenter and architect, and one of the bodies dumped from a power line access road. So we have some connections here. Did these guys all know each other? They all work in the house building, in general house building, same industry. What does that mean? And Colleen McNamee was discovered east of exit 68 on the Long Island Expressway in North Shirley, which is pretty close to Manorville. I mean, some of these connections, they are kind of hard to ignore. Now, Bitrolf is also suspected of a third slaying. Let's go to LongIslandPress.com. Manorville man arrested for 90s murders, suspected in third cold case. This was posted July 22nd, 2014 by Rashed Mian. A Manorville man arrested Monday for allegedly killing 2 women 2 decades ago is suspected of slaying a third woman around the same time, Suffolk County authorities said. John Bitrolf, 48, was ordered held without bail when he was arraigned Tuesday on 2 counts of second-degree murder at First District Court in Central Islip. "We love you, John," his family members yelled after the court appearance. His family declined to comment afterward, only saying that he is a good family man. Well, that's a comment, so they did comment that. Bitrolf is accused of fatally strangling Rita Tangretti Beinlich, who was 31 when she was last seen hitchhiking before her nude body was found in a wooded area off of Esplanada Drive in East Patchogue on November 3rd, 93. He is also accused of fatally strangling Colleen McNamee, who 20, when her nude body was found in a wooded area south of the Long Island Expressway in North Shirley 2 months later on January 30th, 94. Both women had frequented the area and had prior arrests for prostitution, police had said at the time. But they may not be his only alleged victims. Homicide Squad detectives are also investigating whether Bitrolf killed a third woman, Sandra Costilla, 28, of Queens, whose death resembles Tangretti's and McNamee's, authorities said. Costilla was found dead in the North Sea on South Fork on November 20th, 93. The manner of death, the positioning of her body, and the trace evidence of Miss Costilla is similar to that of Tangretti and McNamee, Suffolk County DA Thomas Spota told reporters Tuesday during a press conference at his Hapagee office. He did not say of Costilla that Costilla worked as a prostitute, but noted, quote, she had a lifestyle that may have been substantially similar, end quote. Suffolk Police Commissioner Ed Weber said he hopes the families can get some closure knowing an arrest has been made. He added, it's not important what their occupation was. Morally correct. In terms of getting more clues, or if there were other perpetrators, it might be relevant. Tangretti's family was in tears as they left the courtroom, their heads peering down, navigating around a scrum of reporters. I almost read that as a scum of reporters. They were too distraught to speak, but one man who identified himself as Tangretti's son said he feels really relieved. A woman who said she was Tangretti's sister and noted that it was her birthday said outside court, this is the best birthday present I could ever have. The family consoled one another as they walked away. Police said Tangretti's address was unknown at the time of her death. It was unclear if there were family of McNamee who lived in Holbrook attended the hearing. McNamee was an outpatient of South Shore Treatment Center in Icelandia at the time and was last seen leaving Blue Dawn Diner nearby. Authorities said Tangretti's and McNamee's cases were similar in that both bodies were uniquely positioned and the same significant piece of clothing was missing, but declined to elaborate. Similar biological and trace evidence were found at both crime scenes. Cause and manner of death of both of these women are exactly the same, Spoda said. The cases went cold for 20 years until Suffolk County Police got an unexpected break, authorities said. In September 2013, Bitroff's brother, Timothy, was convicted of violating an order of protection. A DNA sample submitted to the state data bank upon his conviction matched samples collected in the murders, but the DNA was not his. The male family member who provided his DNA sample was not the killer, Spoda said, citing a crime lab report, but a blood relative of his was indeed the killer. The killer had to be a brother of the very same parents of the person who provided the sample, Spoda said. That's when investigators focused their attention on Bitroff. Prosecutors said they matched DNA from a glass of water Bitroff drank while in police custody, with samples preserved from the crime scenes. Spoda credited the break in the case to the evolution of DNA evidence and the perseverance of Suffolk detectives that make cold cases a priority. Bitroff was 27 and lived in the Mastic Shirley area at the time of the crimes, he said. The district attorney also credited the 2012 state law that expanded DNA testing to include all misdemeanor convictions. Had this DNA been required in 1990, certainly this crime would have been solved a lot sooner, Spoda said, referring to Bitroff's prior conviction for assault. Bitroff's attorney asked the judge to set bail $50,000, arguing that there was enough to cast doubt on the prosecutor's case. He described Bitroff, a carpenter, as a family man with two children, one of whom had just graduated high school and is heading to college. The attorney declined to comment after the arraignment. Instead, the judge ordered Bitroff held at Suffolk County Jail without bail. The case is expected to be presented to a grand jury on Thursday. Spoda also shot down any idea of a connection between these three cases and the investigation into the unsolved Gilgo Beach murders. He said the respective murders and crime scenes are unique in that there is no evidentiary link, except for the fact that so many of these Gilgo Beach victims had certain body parts found in Manorville, where Bitroff lived in that area. So that is a curiosity. So is there a connection to Sandra Costello? So let's examine this. Oddstops.com has a write-up here. The woods where Sandra Costello was found murdered, crime scene location in Southampton, New York. November 21st, 93, two hunters discovered the remains of Sandra Costello at this location in North Sea, Southampton. The 28-year-old had been strangled to death and left partially clothed in these residential woods near Fish Cove. At the time, the police stated the victim might have been raped. Costello's remains had been lying in the woods for several days before they were discovered. The authorities were able to identify them by using her fingerprints. In 92, she had been arrested for jumping over a subway turnstile. As a result, the police had a record of her on file. Okay, so I've actually never heard of people being arrested for that. I mean, is that an arrestable offense? Don't they just usually issue a ticket? Because I've seen so many. I mean, I've seen people jump those subway turnstiles, and I mean, even when they get chased, a lot of them get away. But sometimes nobody even gives chase because usually they're younger and fast. But wow, that's a curiosity. Are there any experts in subway turnstile jumping? Is that really an arrestable offense? The 28-year-old's last known address was on Gates Avenue in Ridgewood, Queens. However, it is believed that she wasn't living there at the time of her death. According to police, she was a drifter who sometimes used the surname Cutello. Costello's murder is believed to have been linked to the killings of two sex workers called Rita Tangretti and Colleen McNamee. Although she had no arrests for prostitution, the police stated that she lived a lifestyle that was substantially similar. In 2017, Manorville resident John Bitroff was convicted of killing Tangretti and McNamee. He is also believed to be the prime suspect in the murder of Costello. I mean, that's interesting phrasing, believed to be. At the time of his following his arrest, Bitroff was publicly named as the prime suspect in the murder of Sandra Costello. The three victims were small and slight, standing at around 5 feet tall. They were all strangled to death over a 3-month period and posed in similar ways. Furthermore, their bodies were all found naked in wooded areas. According to Spoda, trace evidence at Costello's crime scene also pointed towards a connection. However, he did not elaborate. There's a newspaper clipping here from 94. The 3 women had certain similarities. All were white, around 5 feet tall, and no more than 125 pounds. I mean, Castilla doesn't really look white. Huh. Around 5 feet tall and no more than 125 pounds, and all were murdered, their nude bodies found in wooded areas within 3 months of each other. Yesterday, Suffolk Homicide Commander said that they may have something else in common, their killer. The investigation has definitely linked 2 victims, Colleen McNamee and Rita Tangretti Beinlich, said Detective Lieutenant John Geirash, the squad's commander. Additionally, we have reason to believe Sandra Castilla may possibly be linked as well. We believe, based on the totality of the circumstances, they were most likely sexually motivated homicides. Geirash declined to specify what evidence or information investigators had used to draw these conclusions. So what jumped out at everybody right there? All 3 of these also fit the MO of Gilgo Beach and all of these associated victims in that they're all pretty short and small in stature, all around 5 feet. Other than 1 or 2 of them, but most of them all fit this description to a T in just being very, very small in stature. What does everybody make of this? I mean, this is kinda weird. So let's continue here on the timeline. May 2020, confirmation announced a forensic ID of formerly unidentified remains of Valerie Mack. And then we go to July 2023, a suspect charged in 3 of the killings, Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartholomew, and Amber Costello. All right, now let's go to the other possible victims before we get to Rex here. Identified. Tina Elizabeth Foglia. 19-year-old Tina Foglia was last seen alive in the early morning hours of February 1st, 1982 at the Hammerheads Rock Music Venue on Sunrise Highway, West Islip, which is not that far from Gilgo Beach. She had hitchhiked from her home to the venue to see a friend performing with a Queens-based band, Equinox. Her remains were discovered by Department of Transportation workers February 3rd on the shoulder of Sagticos State Parkway in Suffolk County. Her dismembered body, which had been placed in 3 separate plastic garbage bags, was found a few miles north of the Robert Moses Causeway, which leads to Gilgo Beach and Oak Beach. A diamond ring that Foglia was known to wear was missing, and the DNA of an unknown male was found on the garbage bags. Police have not ruled out the possibility that Tina Foglia was an early victim of a Long Island serial killer, but have stated that a connection is not an active avenue of the investigation. And I mean, obviously, now with this new suspect in custody, they're obviously going to test his DNA against all of these, but they haven't charged him. There's only 3 charges thus far. Because if this DNA was found in the garbage bag, if this is Rex's DNA, you would think they could link them, unless, of course, and obviously I'm sure they would have checked him against Bitrolf as well. So are there more than 2 guys here in the home building trade? Construction, architect, carpenters, things of that nature. You know, it'd be kind of crazy if these guys were communicating like on some kind of home building forum, and somehow one thing led to another and talk shifted to darker subjects. Would they have been comparing notes, and did they actually... You know, an avenue I don't know if people have thought about. Is it possible they did work together on certain killings, and then if one of them had a falling out with the others, would they continue to use the similar dump sites, almost attempting to frame the guy they had a falling out with? Would that cause absolute mayhem in the investigation? I believe it would. And is that one of the reasons the case, or at least, again, we have somebody in custody, that there's only 3 charges? And all these other deaths really are highly suspicious in terms of possibly being related. Jacqueline Ashley Smith, 16, was last seen in Brooklyn, New York, August 7th, 99. She had left her home 9 p.m. to visit friends and never came back. She was reported missing August 12th, 99. On June 20th, 2000, an unidentified female torso was recovered near Beach 88th Street in Rockaway Beach, Queens. Now that's a bit farther. That is a bit farther from Gilgo. But the Arms of Peaches, not quite. Yeah, I mean, this is a wide spread on Long Island, but it's all. I mean, technically, it's all. I mean, it's the same general area, though. It's close enough to where, obviously, people would be looking at links. The torso was found in plastic bags and wrapped with tape. No other body parts were recovered. The case was previously listed in the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs. The victim was later identified as Smith. 2 years later, the torso of Andre Isaac was also recovered in Rockaway, not far from where Smith was found. Andre Isaac was a professional drag queen, known by his stage name Sugar Bear. He was 6'5", and was 25 years old when he disappeared from East New York in November 2002. See, now we have another link to either some kind of drag queen or transvestite, because we have a second male here who had dressed as a female. What does that mean? Because now there's not just the one unidentified Asian. Now there's also Andre Isaac, found near Jackie Ashley Smith 2 years later in that area. Wow, this is really tough. Is it possible there's only one serial killer killing all of these people? Or is it more likely there's a group of them? If it were a group, obviously with none of these DNA matches, it would be hard. Yeah, that would make it a lot harder. And obviously, if there is some kind of police corruption also involved, blocking FBI investigation, what does that mean? So he was 25, Andre Isaac, 25 years old when he disappeared from East New York, November 2002. According to a friend, Isaac was last seen shortly before Thanksgiving getting into a car with a secret friend. The vehicle was described as a red BMW-type coupe driven by a Hispanic man. Isaac's torso was found close to the boardwalk on Beach 63 Street in Arverne, Queens, on December 17, 2002. On January 25, 2003, his head was discovered by ice skaters in East Mill Pond in Moriches, New York, in Suffolk County, with a single bullet wound to a temple. Well, that's a different MO. Is it possible the Asian male and this guy belong to one killer and all the others do not? And is it possible they just accidentally happen to be in the same vicinity? And where... So this is actually... See, yeah, this is kind of looking related, though, because his head is found near Manorville. I mean, this is tough. We have these two major sites, and actually basically three sites now. I mean, this is weird. This is so weird, because out of all the different places, like, it's not like they were farther down, closer to, like, East Hampton, or even Montauk, like... Or so far, or up more into New York or northern New Jersey. I mean, they're all in these same two areas. And this is a highly populated area with so many different cities and towns here. It's so tough. It is so tough to say none of these are related just because, again, we have multiple dump sites, but they all end up being the same three locations. With all these multiple dump sites are all the same. His arms and legs were later found several miles away in plastic bags. Isaac's case was added to the Suffolk County Police Department Gilgo News website May 29th, 2020. Wow, that's weird, because they didn't even add him. So that's 2000, remains were found 2002 and 2003. So torso, Beach 63 Street. Head, Moriches, New York, and arms and legs found several miles away in plastic bags. It doesn't say exactly where. Was it around Gilgo? Because that'd be... Well, let's find out exactly where it is. We need more thorough write-ups here. It actually doesn't say. On rockawave.com, it also just says several miles away. Arms and legs found several miles away. It doesn't say exactly. Why is it so hard to find that out? So on Web Sleuths, they discuss this. The torso and head were found 68 to 70 miles apart. The torso was found way back west in the Rockaways, which is closer to the Gilgo Beach dumping ground, but still the most western remains found, if truly a Long Island serial killer victim. John Bitrolf lived less than 6 miles north of the pond where the head was found. His house literally is a straight shot north and 2 right turns. That's it. His childhood home was 4 miles south of the pond. I mean, I suppose with this window of time, I mean, it is possible that 2 different serial killers are using these dumping grounds with, I mean, again, because there's different sets of remains found in the same 2, I mean, how can we say they're not related? For some of them, maybe, but for the remains that weren't split up, for the remains that were only one set of remains were found, maybe that's a different guy, I guess. But I don't know. Wow, here's an interesting post from Deb Z, September 8th, 2020 on the Web Sleuths. I agree with more than one killer. I believe in a group from the gated community where throwing snuff parties or having human hunting parties. With multiple men involved, each might have their own style of kill and victim preference. A few of the main players appear to have been related to the police department, thus nobody looking for the missing young women and men. Wow, that's kind of insane. But would one of the dump sites be that close to where they live, though? I mean, if they had police protection, I guess they might not care, but that's is that the wildest theory yet? So on Murder Inc. WordPress blog, it stated that the arms and legs were also recovered in Moriches, which is kind of weird. So not that far from the torso. Or not that far from the head, rather. And the torso was found farther. I mean, there's some crazy maps here with literally dozens of victims. I mean, we're going to take this one at a time, but yeah, I mean, it seems kind of, borderline impossible for one person to have done these dozens and dozens of kills with theoretical links. Okay, let's go to Jamie Diane Seymour, 21-year-old escort and drug user, last seen in Brick, New Jersey, July 22nd, 2005. She called her father July 22nd to let him know she was on her way to the Port Authority area to meet a client. Seymour used someone else's phone at the Manhattan Port Authority to call her mother later that day. She has not been seen or heard from since. After the final phone call to her mother, then 2 weeks passed, no one heard from Seymour. The family became worried. And that's kind of weird, too. At what point, I mean, if there's that much info being shared, like if she's telling her father she's going to meet a client, is that for safety reasons? And then if she doesn't show up literally within hours, I mean, I guess he could wait maybe an extra couple hours, but within 24 hours, at most 48, wouldn't most family members be concerned at that point? No one heard from her since she said she was meeting a client. That's a problem. August 8th, her father reported her missing to the police. Seymour spent time prior to her disappearance in New York City and had a criminal record. There have been few leads in Seymour's case, and her sister believes that she met with foul play. Police have never indicated any connection between Seymour's disappearance and the Long Island serial killer. Seymour was a young woman with a small frame, like other victims of the Long Island serial killer. She vanished in July, similar to victims Melissa Bartholomew, Maureen Brainard Barnes, and Jessica Taylor. Seymour was also last seen at the same place as Jessica Taylor, the Port Authority bus station in Midtown Manhattan. And so she was never found. Her remains never found. I mean, it says here on the wiki, it says young woman with small frame, but on Namus, she's actually listed as 5'6", and 115 to 135 pounds. I mean, 5'6" would make her taller than the average woman, and a bit taller than the victims that are 4'10" to 5. So I don't know if that's a stretch or not. But she's never been found. Tanya Rush, June 23rd, 2008. So we have another June, July. Tanya Rush, 39, was she's a bit older, last seen around 3 a.m. walking towards a subway station in Brooklyn. Her dismembered body was found by a state road cleaning crew inside a black canvas suitcase June 27th, 2008, in plain sight on Newbridge Road ramp leading to the westbound Southern State Parkway in Belmore, New York. Does that suggest that they wanted her found quickly? Because it's only a couple days after she went missing. Different MO here. Different age for sure. Rush was a mother of 3 who had been a Salvation Army volunteer and had worked in telemarketing. She took up sex work to support a drug addiction. Rush was African American and lived in the Van Dyke Houses, a Brownsville public housing complex in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know if were any of the other victims from Brooklyn. Maybe one of them or none of them. She doesn't really seem to fit the profile as much, though. But again, if this is a group of individuals, Belmore is also kind of not super close, but not that far from Gilgo, so But Rex Harmon's house is in Massapequa Park, which actually is kind of close to Belmore. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, this is tough. This might actually be the toughest case yet in terms of deciphering available information. Shannon Gilbert, 24-year-old, she was an escort who may have been a victim of the Long Island serial killer. She left for a client's residence in Oak Beach after midnight, May 1st, 2010. 4:51 in the morning, 911 dispatchers received a panicked call from Gilbert, who can be heard saying that there was someone after her and that they were trying to kill her. Although, again, she could possibly be referring to a single person, because some people do say they're trying to kill me. They are trying to kill me. Yeah, that's not a guarantee. I mean, people who know her would know better whether she frequently referred to a single person as they. Especially if she didn't know the person. But if she... yeah, that's tough. She was last seen a short time later banging on the front door of a nearby Oak Beach residence and screaming for help before running off into the night. And that's kind of like... Man, that's so scary, because that's like straight out of a horror movie. And the neighbor, either nobody's home or they don't want to help her because they're too scared. And then she ends up running more and, not making it. That's crazy. After 19 months of searching, police found Gilbert's remains in a marsh half a mile from where she was last seen. May 2012, the Suffolk County medical examiners ruled that Gilbert accidentally drowned after entering the marsh. They believe that she was in a drug-induced panic and have concluded that hers was a death by misadventure or inconclusive. Her family believes she was murdered. November 15th, 2012, a lawsuit filed by her mother, Marie Gilbert, against the Suffolk County Police Department in the hopes of getting more answers about what happened to her daughter the night she went missing. Due to the controversy about Gilbert's death, in September 2014, famed forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden agreed to conduct an independent autopsy of Gilbert's remains in hopes of determining a clear cause of death. Upon examination of Gilbert's remains, Baden found damage to her hyoid bone, suggesting that strangulation may have occurred. Baden also noted that her body was found face up, which is not common for drowning victims. Despite this, her death is still officially listed by police as an accident. July 23rd, 2016, Marie Gilbert was murdered in her home in Ellenville, New York. Later that day, her younger daughter, Sarah Elizabeth Gilbert, was arrested and charged with the stabbing death of her mother. On May 6, 2020, the New York State Supreme Court ordered Suffolk County Police to release Gilbert's 911 call, denying their request to withhold it after more than 10 years. The tapes were released to the Gilberts' estate attorney, John Ray, a short time later. Under court order, Ray is barred from discussing the specifics of the call. He did, however, comment that the nature of the calls contradict what Suffolk Police Detective Vincent Stefan had described in earlier reports about the calls from that morning. Specifically, Gilbert's tone had been described by Detective Stefan as calm and indicated no desperation. After reviewing the tapes, Ray claimed that this was not true. On May 13th, 2022, the Suffolk County Police Department released the 911 call. Okay, so what kind of scum lie about a victim, accidental or not? I mean, this is just insane. This is insane. Like, just so they can kind of paint it as, like, maybe it really was accidental, but I mean, this is insane to just flat out lie about that. That is absolutely crazy. And so her mother ends up being murdered by her other daughter. I mean, can you get more tragic? Can anybody think of a more tragic scenario? This is absolutely insane. And Ellenville, New York, by the way, is nowhere close to Long Island. It's all the way up closer to the, up in New York State, rather. So it is not on Long Island. For those that were thinking maybe the serial killer tracked her down, or maybe he did, but it seems like I don't want to go too deep into this case right now because we have so much else to go over. But that's just tragic. Her younger daughter was arrested and charged with the stabbing death. Oh, that is tragic. So, further details, it says that her daughter suffered from schizophrenia. One report claimed that she had voices in her head telling her to carry out the crime. So, wow. Alright, continuing on here. Unidentified cherries in Mamaroneck, March 3rd, 2007. Suitcase containing the dismembered torso of an unidentified Hispanic or light-skinned African-American woman washed up on a beach at Harbor Island Park in the town of Mamaroneck. The victim had a tattoo of 2 cherries on her left breast, similar in appearance to the tattoo found on Peaches. She was determined to have been stabbed to death, never identified. The victim is referred to as Cherries by investigators. One of her dismembered legs washed up at Cold Spring Harbor, March 21st, 2007. The other at Oyster Bay in the village of Cove Neck the following day. Cherries was dismembered in a fashion similar to the other 3 victims, to 3 of the other victims, Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, and Peaches, meaning she may have been linked to the other official victims. So she was dismembered in the same way as Peaches, and this is Cherry's somewhat similar tattoos. So Peaches and Cherry's both have this tattoo on their left breast. So Cold Spring Harbor is actually on the other side, on the northern side of Long Island, getting washed up there. So is he also dumping on the other side? I mean, that would make more sense, right? Like, why are there not more victims on the other side of Long Island? It seems like they're all on the southern side. And Cove Neck is pretty close to Cold Spring Harbor. So, yeah, okay. That's a curiosity, but they are linked through a similar tattoo, similar dismemberment style. Okay, unidentified woman in Lattingtown, January 23rd, 2013. A woman walking her dog found the human remains in a small patch of brush in a sandy area along the shore at the end of Sheep Lane in Lattingtown near Oyster Bay. The skeletal remains showed signs of trauma and were wrapped in a particular type of material that police have not disclosed. The remains are believed to be that of a woman between the ages of 20 and 30 who was possibly Asian. She was wearing a 22-karat solid gold pig pendant, which may be related to the Chinese zodiac year of the pig. The relevant birth years are 71, 83, and 95, possibly suggesting that the woman died at the age of 29. Investigators believe that her body had been dumped before Hurricane Sandy in late 2012. Her case may be connected to the other 10 bodies found 32 miles away in and around Gilgo Beach, although, unlike the other victims, her body was buried rather than left above the ground. And this location is actually close to Cove Neck, closer to Cove Neck. This is the northern side of Long Island, not the southern side where all the other victims are. But relatively close to, what is that, about 4 miles, 3.5 miles away from Cherries. So there's actually a whole bunch of other potential victims. I'm not going to go over them now because we still have to go over the arrest. But let's just continue with the overview here. ID of the killer. The media has speculated about a profile of the killer referred to by police as Joe C., an unknown subject. According to the New York Times, the perpetrator is most likely a white male who would have been in his mid-20s to mid-40s and who is very familiar of the South Shore of Long Island. He had access to burlap sacks, which he used to hold the bodies for disposal. He may have a detailed knowledge of law enforcement techniques and perhaps ties to law enforcement, which have thus far helped him avoid detection. Newsday reporters speculated that serial killer Joel Rifkin, a former resident of Long Island, may have been responsible for some of the older remains found in March-April 2011. 4 of the victims' complete bodies have never been found. In April 2011 prison interview with Newsday, Rifkin denied having anything to do with recently discovered remains. On July 13, 2013, a Massapequa Park resident was charged with the murders of Amberlynn Costello, Megan Waterman, and Melissa Bartholomew. So what's curious about Rifkin, his victims were found kind of all over the place. And Rifkin also drew police maps of where he abandoned all the bodies. So was he holding back? Yeah, it's kind of tough because with some serial killers, other serial killers kind of mix and match the truth. Some serial killers are completely honest, and other serial killers are just lying about pretty much everything. Let's just go over him real quick. Joel Rifkin is an American serial killer who was sentenced to 203 years in prison for the murders of 9 women between 1989 and 1993. Though it is believed he killed as many as 17 people. Rifkin's birth parents were young college students, and his biological father was an Army vet. On February 14, 1959, when he was 3 weeks old, Rifkin was adopted by an upper-middle-class couple living on Long Island. Rifkin performed poorly in school due to learning disabilities and was unpopular with classmates. He graduated from East Meadow High School in 1977, then attended classes at Nassau Community College and State University of New York at Brockport and the State University of New York at Farmingdale, but left before earning a degree. After leaving college, Rifkin became self-employed as a landscaper. Okay, I mean, that's not that close to home building and architects and carpenters, but kind of in the same category. You know what's kind of crazy? This just occurred to me. Is it possible there is some kind of club or whatever in Long Island where they kill people, and maybe he knew about it or was involved with it? And some of these other serial killers, they're involved with the club. The club is the central link, and there's multiple serial killers operating. August 22nd, 1987, Rifkin was arrested during a sex worker sting in Hempstead, New York, after offering an undercover female police officer money for sex. Murders. Rifkin committed his first murder February 20th, 1989, killing Heidi Balk in his home in East Meadow. He then dismembered her body, removing her teeth and fingertips, putting her head in a paint can where he left it in the woods on a golf course in Hopewell, New Jersey, disposing of her legs further north, and dumping her remaining torso and arms into the East River around New York City. March 5th, 1989, Balk's severed head was discovered on the 7th hole of the golf course. April 8th, 1989, Balk's legs were found in Pequannock Creek near Jefferson Township, New Jersey. Her remains were not identified until 2013. It is assumed that Rifkin killed 16 more women during the next 4 years. He was implicated in Balk's murder after his arrest in 1993. Investigators determined in 2013 that Balk and the woman he described as his first victim were the same person. Rifkin picked up Tiffany Bresciani, a prostitute who was working on Allen Street in Manhattan, June 24th, 1993. Tiffany was with her pimp and boyfriend, punk rock musician Dave Rubenstein. Rifkin told Rubenstein that she was going to be returning in 20 minutes. After Tiffany failed to return, Rubenstein called the police with a description of the 84 Mazda pickup that Rifkin drove. Partially as a result of her death, Rubenstein would commit suicide by overdose less than a month later. On June 28th, 93, state troopers patrolling Long Island's Southern State Parkway noticed the pickup truck without a license plate. After pulling Rifkin over, they found Bresciani's body under a tarpaulin. He was found guilty of 9 counts of second-degree murder in 94 and sentenced to 203 years up to life in prison. Just 203 years up to life? What does that mean, just in case he lives longer than 203? And yeah, the remains are being found kind of all over the place in terms of Rifkin. I mean, some Iris Sanchez found near JFK Airport. Several sets of remains found Coney Island Creek, all the way west in Brooklyn. Some remains found Northampton, east of Manorville, although not that far from Manorville. So yeah, I mean, isn't it crazy? He gets pulled over and there's remains on the floor of the truck. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. Gets pulled over with a body. But this was June 93. He also, I mean, it is kind of crazy. Most of his, a lot of remains are found in June, July. That's not necessarily the disappearance, though. Alright, suspects and persons of interest. John Bitrolf. September 12th, 2017. Suffolk County Prosecutor Robert Biancavilla said that John Bitrolf, a Suffolk County resident convicted of murdering 2 prostitutes and suspected in the murder of a third, was a suspect in at least one of the Gilgo Beach murders. Biancavilla said that Bitrolf was likely responsible for the deaths of other women and that there were similarities between the Gilgo Beach crime scenes and Bitrolf's known murders, for which he was convicted in May 2017 and sentenced in September. Bitrolf was arrested in 2014 after his DNA was found on 2 murdered women, Rita Tangretti and Colleen McNamee, whose bodies were found in 93 and 94, respectively. This is all kind of crazy, though, because it almost seems as soon as Rifkin is caught, so he's caught June 93, June 28th, 93, and then that November, all of a sudden, Rita Tangretti is found. So it's almost like as soon as this guy's caught, this other guy is picked up and caught. And then as soon as, let's get into the timeline here, when he's put away, I mean, other murders continue. It's almost like they pick up where the other guy left off, or do they just always operate? And there are even more unknown cases, let's say missing persons cases, where, no remains are found. How would that be reported or even connected to this case if it's just a missing person? Not just, but in terms of, not someone confirmed to have been murdered in order to connect this. Wow. Yeah, this is really weird. Again, I mean, how many coincidences are there here? He's suspected in the murder of a third, and was a suspect in at least one of the Gilgo Beach murders. Biancavilla said that Bitrolf was likely responsible for the deaths of other women, and there were similarities. Okay. The match had been made through DNA submitted by his brother, who was convicted in 2013 in an unrelated case. Bitrolf was convicted in May 2017 of these murders, and in September sentenced to consecutive terms of 25 years for each murder. Okay, but wait a second. So he wasn't arrested until 2014, though. So, yeah, he wasn't arrested until 2014. So he could have all these other victims, yes. So he still technically was free at that time. So Bitrolf was convicted May 2017 of these murders. In September, sentenced to consecutive terms of 25 years for each murder. Suffolk County Police did not comment on the prosecutor's statement due to an active homicide investigation of the Gilgo Beach murders. Bitrolf's attorney rejected the prosecutor's assertion. Bitrolf lived in Manorville, 3 miles from where the torsos of Gilgo Beach victims Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack were recovered. Bitrolf was a hunter who was said to enjoy killing animals. He was a carpenter by trade with access to hacksaws and electric saws. Because many of the bodies were found precisely dismembered, his access to and proficiency with these tools is of note. The grown daughter of Rita Tangretti, who was murdered by Bitrolf, was also the best friend of Melissa Bartholomew, who was one of the Gilgo Beach victims? Bartholomew's mother said that her daughter Melissa had a lot of calls to Manorville from her phone before her death. What? So Melissa Bartholomew's friend is Rita Tangretti's daughter. Whoa, why did they not mention this earlier? That's insane. But she wasn't the one that got the phone calls. Bartholomew's teenage sister, Amanda, was the one who received the calls. Wow. Yeah, the links here are insane. And Bartholomew's mother said that Melissa had a lot of calls to Manorville from her phone before her death. They never traced the exact number. Like, what's going on there? Yeah, I mean, I think I have to say this might be the most complex case just due to the amount of victims, the overlaps, the suspects. This is really, really crazy. James Burke. Former Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke was reported to have blocked an FBI probe of the Gilgo Beach case during his time as police chief. In November 2016, Burke was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison for assault and conspiracy. Burke violently assaulted a man in custody who had stolen a duffel bag from his police vehicle. The duffel bag contained sex toys, pornography, and Viagra. Burke pled guilty in February 2016 to charges of a civil rights violation and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Thomas Spota, the then DA in Suffolk County, was convicted in December 2019 of conspiracy to cover up Burke's violent assault. Christopher McPartland, who had been Suffolk County's top anti-corruption prosecutor, was also convicted in this conspiracy. Yeah, I mean, how insane is all this? The anti-corruption prosecutor is convicted for conspiracy to cover up this corruption. Wow. So we know how the Popo and the DA work in Suffolk County, don't we? I mean, this just does not look good. How is this case supposed to be solved when there's just this level of corruption? The Suffolk County Police Chief? Wow. December 2016, an attorney for Gilbert's family reported that an escort had stated that she suspected that Burke might be connected to the Gilgo Beach cases. The escort, who identified herself as Leanne, stated that at one party she attended in April 2011 in Oak Beach, she had seen Burke drag a woman of Asian appearance by the hair to the ground. Leanne said that when she saw Burke at a later party in August 2011, she decided to engage in sexual activity with him. She described an experience in which Burke violently yanked her head during oral sex to the point where she began to tear up. Burke was unable to reach orgasm and proceeded to throw $300 to $400 at her afterwards. At the time, she was not a professional prostitute, and she states that this was the first time she was paid for sex. So he's going to these parties in the same time period that all this is going on. This is insane. So wild claims against James Burke here. I mean, is this a where there's smoke, there's fire situation? Peter Hackett. 2 days after Gilbert's disappearance, Peter Hackett, a neighbor of Joseph Brewer, who was a former physician and who had worked for Suffolk County as a police surgeon, phoned Shannon Gilbert's mother, Marie Gilbert. Marie Gilbert later recounted that Hackett said that he was taking care of Shannon, that he ran a home for wayward girls, and that he had given her medication because she was distressed. 3 days later, Hackett called Marie Gilbert again, denying that he had any contact with her daughter and that he had previously phoned her. What? Investigators later confirmed through phone records that Hackett had indeed called Marie Gilbert twice following her daughter's disappearance. The marshy area where Gilbert's remains were found was near Hackett's backyard, and her personal items and clothing were found directly behind his property in the marsh. Gilbert's family filed a wrongful death suit against Hackett in November 2012, claiming that he took Gilbert into his home that morning and administered drugs to her, facilitating her death. The lawsuit was dismissed because it could not be proven that Hackett had administered drugs or treatment to Gilbert. Police later revealed that Hackett had a history of inserting himself into or exaggerating his role in certain major events. Police later ruled out Hackett as a suspect in the deaths of Gilbert and the Gilgo Beach victims. Hackett left Oak Beach and moved to Florida with his family not long after Gilbert's disappearance. Wow. So they didn't find her remains until December 2011. She goes missing May 2nd, 2010. So a year and a half, but he moved before the remains were found. So did he not know that a remain... wow, this is the craziest... wow. I mean, I think this is the craziest coincidence yet. This is the craziest coincidence yet. So this guy who happens to insert himself into cases or exaggerate cases connected to the police, and, you know, all this corruption in the police here. He's a police surgeon working for Suffolk County. The Suffolk County police chief convicted for corruption. So this guy, Peter Hackett, so he calls, claiming that he took... So Peter Hackett is the neighbor of Joseph Brewer. So she's inside Brewer's house during the first 911 call. Is everybody following here? So she's found, her remains are found a year and a half after. So the neighbor of the guy whose house, the neighbor of the guy of Hackett, Hackett's neighbor, is the guy whose house she's calling from. Yeah, this is crazy. The police didn't arrive in Oak Beach until 5:40 a.m., so almost an hour for them to arrive. I mean, that old saying, when seconds matter, police are only minutes or longer away. And actually, they only came because the woman whose door at 5:21 a.m. she banged on another lady's door, or a guy's door, Gus Coletti. Gus Coletti, she banged on his door screaming for help. He called the police. He actually, it looked like he either outside or wherever, Coletti sat her down, told her he called the police. Shannon got up and fled. Huh. Was she afraid that because he was a man, or... She then ended up at Barbara Brennan's house banging on her door. Miss Brennan also called 911. It took police 20 minutes to respond to Coletti's call. This is absolutely insane, though. Something weird going on in that area, no matter how you look at it, but... Wow. Okay. So, her client is the neighbor of Hackett, who supposedly has a... Well, police are saying he has a history of inserting himself or exaggerating his role in certain events. Is that true, though? Is that really true, though? Or did they just say that to explain this away? Because the client that she's running from is his neighbor. And she's found right next to his property line. And he's calling her mother twice after she disappeared. So does he not know? Like, what are the chances here, statistically? A guy that likes to insert himself into cases, if that's even true, is calling the mother of a missing woman who had a frantic police call inside his neighbor's house, who ends up being found a year and a half later right next to his property line? So did he just not know? So was it a shock to him that she was found right next to his property line? Was that a shock to him? Because supposedly he moved before the body was found. Not long after Gilbert's disappearance, so I'm assuming that means less than a year and a half before the body was found. Wow. Okay, I don't know what to make of this. And then, of course, Joel Rifkin, we went over him. And now let's get to the July 2023 arrest. July 13th, 2023, a 59-year-old Nassau County resident was arrested in Midtown Manhattan and subsequently charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder as well as 3 counts of the lesser charge of second-degree murder related to the deaths of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He is also the prime suspect in the death of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. The suspect pleaded not guilty. The suspect is an architect who has lived much of his life in Massapequa Park on Long Island. According to an interview he did with a YouTuber, he has worked in Manhattan since 1987. And you know what's kind of weird? Wow, I mean, he's definitely Long Island. I mean, that accent. But so this was about a year prior to the arrest. A YouTuber with an architecture channel or something of that nature. So he works in Manhattan since 87. Authorities began to seriously consider him as a suspect March 2022 after discovering that a Chevrolet Avalanche registered in his name had been linked to one of the killings by a witness. Further investigation of his cell phone records indicated that he had been in contact with 3 of the 4 victims. That's pretty damning. So, yeah, it seems like there has to be more than one guy involved unless we're going to believe this stack of coincidences regarding John Bitrolf. And for those that say it's just coincidental, for those that want to claim that it's just coincidental that Rita Tangretti's daughter, murdered by Bitrolf, the best friend of Melissa Bartholomew, one of the Gilgo Beach victims, Long Island has a population of 3 million people. So it's not like this is a small town where that's actually believable. I mean, if we get the population, whatever, a couple thousand people, I mean, it's still a little iffy. I mean, it would still be a little iffy. You can't ignore that. But there's a difference between, let's say, a 3,000 people town where it's possibly believable it could be a coincidence, and 3 million people. I mean, this level of coincidence, there must be a link. And, of course, Bartholomew's mother said her daughter Melissa had a lot of calls to Manorville because that's where Bitrolf lives. And then also he's a carpenter, and Rex Hewerman is an architect. I mean, just the level of coincidence here for them not to be connected. I mean, we'll see, but how do you write that? I mean, coincidence theorists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd, they're going to, of course, just write that off as nothing. But, logically, how can anybody do that with a functioning brain? Through June 2023, an email account linked to the suspect had conducted online searches of the investigation's progress. Court records also indicated that he had searched the internet for sadistic materials involving children, images of victims and their relatives. Hair believed to be from the suspect's wife, who was out of state during the murders, was found on or near the victims and was matched using DNA testing. DNA taken from a pizza box discarded by the suspect was also used in his ID. Yeah, that's damning. So his wife's hair... You know what's crazy? Like, this just made me think of the Scott Peterson case, where Peterson's wife's hair was found in pliers or on his boat, whatever. Obviously, that doesn't mean that he killed her, right? Because if there's random hair in the house, there could be hair anywhere he's going, which is the exact thing that happened here, where Rex's wife's hair is found on or near the victim. Now, she was out of state. I'm guessing this is confirmed, because that would also make sense that he would be killing when she was out of state. So she couldn't have done it, but the hair was found there. So did that come again from the home? I mean, that's just another curiosity. Here's an article, Eyewitness News, abc7ny.com, Monday, July 17, 2023. Gilgo Beach murder suspect had over 200 guns in his Long Island home. More than double the number for which he had permits, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison said Monday. And it's also an interesting question on whether or not the corruption has stopped, and that's why the case moved forward. Or did the corruption not stop? And how involved is the FBI? Or are they primarily involved? So there could still be widespread local corruption. In court on Friday, Suffolk DA Ray Tierney said that Huerman had permits for 92 firearms. Police on Monday were searching for a second storage facility after they looked through one Sunday, expanding their search for physical evidence that could tie Huerman to the 3 women he's charged with killing. Investigators have carried out a mountain of evidence from his cluttered home in Massapequa Park. Sources say officials are also looking for victim trophies, such as earrings or locks of hair, at the 59-year-old architect's house. Investigators began honing in on Huerman after a big break in the case that came from revisiting an old clue. Huerman was tied to the murders in part through DNA extracted from a discarded pizza box he ate and a male hair found on a victim, as well as his activity on a series of burner phones used to arrange meetings with the slain women. It doesn't mention his wife's hair, because I was just about to say, if the cops are framing him to be a patsy, are they really going to be playing this level of 4D chess, where they're not going to plant his hair, they're going to plant his wife's hair, so it makes it look more believable? But now they're saying one of his hairs was also on a victim. The married father of 2 is behind bars, charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, according to an indictment unsealed in Suffolk County Criminal Court. He is also considered the prime suspect in the death of another woman, Maureen Brainerd Barnes. The victims in this case, 11 sets of remains were discovered, were mostly young women who were sex workers. Authorities have said more than one person may have been responsible for the crimes. So even the authorities are saying that. So what's the excuse of all these goofs running around thinking it's just one guy? Huerman was first eyed in the cases in March 2022. At the time he was connected to a Chevy pickup truck a witness had seen where a victim disappeared in 2010. They never stopped working and will continue to work tirelessly until we bring justice to all the families involved, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison said. Does that include blocking the FBI from the investigation from the corrupt police chief? Huerman was arrested at 8:30 p.m. Thursday in Midtown Manhattan outside the office building where he works as an architect. Exclusive video obtained by Eyewitness News shows authorities surrounding Huerman to take him into custody. I still don't get why they did it in the middle of a crowded street. Like, why not do it? They know where he lives. They've been following him. They know where he works. They have eyes on him probably 24/7. So, yeah, that's weird. Tierney, personally appearing before the judge, called Huerman an ongoing danger. He implored the judge not to allow bail as Huerman owns houses in South Carolina and Vegas and is a flight risk. Wow. Now I'm curious as to whether or not, like, how much time does he spend in those 2 houses? And are there any unsolved homicides within the general area there where he lives or owns houses? He said Huerman used several burner phones to make more than 200 searches about the Gilgo Beach investigation and family members of the victims. And I wonder if they can ID his voice. I'm sure they're working on that right now, whether or not he made those calls. Defense attorney Michael J. Brown called the case against Huerman extremely circumstantial in nature. And, I mean, it doesn't sound circumstantial unless they can't really link the burner phones to him. But even then, what about the 1 or 2 hairs on the victims, unless they're alleging those were planted? Rex Huerman is 59 years old with no prior criminal history. He's a college graduate. He's a hardworking, licensed architect who has his own New York City firm. He is a loving husband to his wife of over 25 years and an involved and dedicated father to his daughter and stepson. He has entered a not guilty plea and has insisted he did not commit these crimes. There is nothing about Mr. Huerman that would suggest that he's involved in these incidents, and while the government has decided to focus on him despite more significant and stronger leads, we are looking forward to defending him in the court of law with a fair and impartial jury of his peers. You know what's also curious? Was his wife out of town for only those 4 murders? But then again, we have the multiple dump sites, which is a huge issue. But either way, for how many of these victims was his wife out of town? I would like that mapped. That seems to be, I think that would be a good idea to map that. Huerman was held on no bail pending a bail application based on what the judge called extreme depravity of the allegations. Well, I don't think the depravity of allegations matters because obviously he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. What matters is how much hard evidence that he is guilty exists. Because if the burner phones are directly linked to him, like definitively, not theoretically, and the hair was definitively his, and there's no funny business with the labs or any of that stuff, if they show the judge that, I mean, that's what the judge should be considering, not the depravity of the charges, because because otherwise you can charge any innocent person of anything and hold them with no bail based on the charges, not the evidence. So that's a weird thing to say, but the 4 women Huerman is linked to were all found covered in burlap along a half-mile stretch of Ocean Parkway on Long Island's South Shore late 2010. The group has been referred to as the Gilgo 4 after investigators determined that their killings were connected. So what's kind of curious, so how did other parts of their remains end up in other areas? And was it the same exact type of burlap and then different materials used in for all the other victims? So that's why they grouped these particular 4 together. But just the coincidence stack regarding John Bitroff and the connections, Tangretti, Bartholomew, I mean, that is so hard to write off and just pretend there can't be any connection there. That's a problem. Early Friday morning, crime laboratory officers were seen entering his home in Massapequa Park as a large police presence led by Suffolk County Police, New York State Police, and other law enforcement partners kept a perimeter. The home belonged to a family that had long kept to themselves, neighbors said, noting that the dilapidated property seemed out of place among rows of single-family homes and well-kept lawns in the small community. You never saw anybody coming in or out of that house, said Richard Harmon, a neighbor. You would say, who lives there? You never see anybody. That's kind of weird. So they have 2 kids, and nobody ever sees anybody coming and going. That's kind of weird. And it's dilapidated. I mean, this supposedly well-off architect with his own firm in Manhattan and multiple homes in South Carolina and Vegas has this dilapidated, rundown property that's out of place among single-family homes and well-kept lawns in the small community. See, obviously that doesn't really mean anything, but that's just another red flag to add to the list, because that's just kind of weird. I mean, that's kind of weird, because even if he's a weirdo, like, his wife wouldn't want the home taking care of property in the lawn. Like, even if he doesn't care, let's say he's one of these people just 24/7 obsessed with work. If they're that well off, I mean, his wife would hire people. I mean, they could hire people. His wife would demand it. Like, what's going on here? This is pretty weird. Another thing I thought of regarding, just to cover all the bases here, regarding James Burke, the Suffolk County Police Chief, the corrupt police chief, if, let's say there is some kind of club and they do whatever, abuse and murder, or maybe they don't, maybe they just murdered one woman, or it was some kind of act, they didn't intend to, but they killed her, would he bar the FBI from investigating all the other cases because he wants them to think that the woman they killed or were responsible for her death in some way is related to the others, and he wants to block the FBI from discovering that she might not be, so they can kind of use that to cover up their crimes, especially if there's ongoing abuse, like, let's say not murder, but let's say, there's just whatever depravity and abuse involving prostitutes and whatever. Would he want that to continue that activity? So he wants the FBI to never investigate, and then they'll get away with killing the one, or maybe they killed more than one, but they didn't kill all of the Long Island serial killer victims. And yeah, I mean, if all of that is going, it almost seems like there could be multiple things going on here. Because if that's true, and there's also a group of 2 or 3 other serial killers operating independently of what those scum are doing, it kind of possibly could explain some of this insanity. As for the victims, their murders, along with the deaths of 7 other people, have long gone unsolved. Shannon Gilbert's disappearance in 2010 triggered the hunt that exposed the larger mystery. A 24-year-old, so it wouldn't be Gilbert. It would have had to have been one of the other ones, just based on the timeline. For my previous theory. A 24-year-old sex worker, she vanished after leaving a client's house on foot in the seafront community of Oak Beach, disappearing into the marsh. I still can't get over, there's just no way it's a coincidence that the guy's neighbor, Peter Hackett, who just so happens to be a police surgeon for this corrupt department, it just so happens he's calling her mother, and then her remains are found in a direct line from his property line. See, how many people are buying that coincidence stack? I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying that one. It's just, yeah, that's just way too rough. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families, Harrison said Friday. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be out on the streets today. So the property in Vegas was acquired in 2005. It's not that far from the Vegas Strip. Although apparently this is some kind of a timeshare. But it was bought in 2005. Before any of the supposed murders linked to him occurred. He also has a $154,000 plot of land in Chester, South Carolina, near where his brother lives, and he bought that in 2021. But apparently it does not have a house on it. The home in Massapequa Park is valued at $650,000. Actually, it doesn't look that bad from above, but... And he's leasing this highly expensive 5th Avenue office building in Midtown Manhattan. So clearly, I mean, he's got to be somewhat well off. Wow, the front of the home does not look that great. I mean, it doesn't look... I mean, it depends on the images. It doesn't look terrible, but... So let's go over the exact tip that led to this. So this is from the Costello case. So NewYorkPost.com has a write-up here on it. Amber Lynn Costello, 27, was a sex worker, heroin addict who lived in West Babylon, New York, at a home with a woman and 2 men. She advertised on Craigslist and Backpage to support her and her roommate's drug habits. Costello used the names Carolina or Mia, and had tattoos of chaos on her neck, a butterfly on her lower back, and the word Margaret on her leg. Costello had moved to New York from Clearwater, Florida, and completed a 28-day drug rehab, but had relapsed not long before her disappearance. Costello and her housemates shared a cell phone. The other female roommate was also a sex worker, and the men would arrange dates with clients for the women. Costello did... So this is actually making me suspicious because... I mean, how many men are responsible here? I mean, I guess they don't necessarily have to know because, yeah, they wouldn't set they wouldn't set the woman up to be kidnapped and killed because then if they're making money off of them, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So, yeah, they probably wouldn't have known. So the men would arrange dates with clients for the women. Costello did in-calls at her home as well as out-calls. When Costello would meet clients at her house, the 2 male roommates would often run a scam. Once a John had paid money, but before any sex acts occurred, they would confront him saying Costello was their girlfriend, and the man would flee. Costello was last seen leaving her home September 2nd, 2010, to meet a client for sex. Costello did not have her cell phone with her at the time, and she was never reported missing. Costello's body was found December 13th, 2010, on the north side of Ocean Parkway. She's believed to be the 4th victim of the Gilgo 4. And so here's the curious part. Supposedly, I don't know which roommates. So it was I don't know if they. So, New York Post also stated, a witness to the disappearance of Amber Costello identified a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche as the vehicle believed to have been driven by her killer, a bail application said. Investigators then got more info during follow-up interviews last year with the key witnesses whom Harrison had earlier identified as Costello's pimp, who had seen the Avalanche at the sex worker's West Babylon home. We re-interviewed the individual who kind of gave us a better description of Rex Heuermann, saying pretty much that he had bushy hair, these big glasses, and was the size of an ogre. I mean, that's the other thing, too. Like, this guy is pretty gigantic. He's like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". I mean, he's a giant. Court papers also described the pickup driving John as looking like an ogre and about 6'4", which mirrors the physical attributes of Heuermann, who is exactly that height. The pimp told cops he saw the suspect and his Avalanche while planning a September 2010 ruse to scare off Costello's John by pretending to be an angry boyfriend so they could keep the cash without sex. Instead, the angry John demanded they meet the next night. With the burner phone he used linked to Massapequa Park, where the architect lived just miles from where Costello and the other so-called Gilgo 4 women's bodies were found months later in 2010. So if this is actually all legit, it really does seem like he's the guy. So to all the goofs that say, you know, like when they can't process logic, they just hallucinate someone's a contrarian or whatever just for utilizing logic because they don't have the mental capacity to actually think critically or use deductive reasoning. But here, it really does seem like just matching up all these variables, his wife going out of town, possibly his hair and his wife's hair being found on or near the victims. I mean, this is kind of adding up here. Now, again, that doesn't mean he acted alone. That night would be the last time Costello, 27, was seen alive, leaving her house at the same time as the witness saw a dark-colored truck drive by. Okay. So this is going to bring me to my next point. So they knew all this back in September 2010. That's what's shocking. And this is the last post I'm going to go over because we're going to have to round this out. I will obviously be doing follow-up episodes because there's so many more potential victims and also potential suspects with... I mean, it really does seem this guy's involved, though. It does not seem... Unless there's a particular reason for a... I mean, it's just the timeline here, it seems like he's involved. So this was posted by Visual Philosopher on the LISK Killer subreddit. I know that Burke and SCPD were insanely corrupt and disgusting, but damn, this new task force ID'd him as a suspect so quickly. It makes me sick that the families of these beautiful and beloved young women went without answers for so long when this was completely solvable. They had DNA, eyewitnesses, car description, etc. the whole expletive time. Expletive Burke and everyone working with him before who didn't even try. Sex work is real work, and these women mattered. That's all I've got to say, except what's up with the toupee? He wasn't even fully bald. Bizarre. A few responses here. When you consider that they knew it was a Chevy Avalanche and that he lived around Massapequa, it's simply unfathomable that any good faith investigation wouldn't have found him fairly quickly. If they had released that detail to the internet, hell, the crackpots on the internet probably would have found him. I mean, anybody would have found him. A Visual Philosopher replied, exactly what the hell was going on? He was described as 6'4" to 6'6", looking like an ogre with a Chevy Avalanche by eyewitnesses. I'm incensed, but so relieved and happy he's off the street, especially knowing he was still frequenting sex workers. Yeah, so, yeah, this is a problem. This is a huge problem. Because... why did he even keep the truck? So supposedly he had that truck since at least 2007, if not earlier, because Google Images has the street view and everything. That's they have that in front of his house for years on end, going back to at least 2007, if not prior. That's weird. The other thing that's weird is that Costello... so who is this John calling on a burner phone? He's demanding that she meet him that night? Like, why would she agree? Because he's... not to mention, this guy's over 6'4". I mean, this guy's a giant. Not that a smaller man wouldn't harm her, but it's just... I mean, I would think... I mean, even as a man, if you're let's say around 6 foot or under, you know, some of these giants, 6'4", 6'5", and higher... like, there is a certain, like, you do, even the average man is going to consider safety and security. So, for a woman to, I mean, the guy's just, like ogre is a pretty good explanation. Why would she agree to go see him by herself? I mean, maybe he offered, like, a ton of money, but maybe he said, I mean, if he said, I don't care about the cash that they already took, he just... I mean, I don't know, but why would she believe? I mean, I don't know. I guess if she was that desperate, you know, for whatever, drug money, she might have wanted to believe him, but that's a little bit of a strange detail. I mean, I get if she was offering that much, but now again, This guy knows that the roommates saw him. So let's, even if we don't consider the detail of why she agreed to go out with him again after that, this guy knows he was seen. And then what is going on here? This is crazy. I mean, this is just crazy. I mean, he still doesn't get rid of the vehicle. Like, what's going on? Does anybody else find that kind of strange? Like, he's described as this highly intelligent architect. I mean, and obviously, people can make dumb mistakes in the moment, but we're talking about all these years. Like, you would think after the fact, he'd be like, okay, he was seen. Let me at least get rid of the truck. I mean, it's not like they were hurting for money. Like, it's just so weird. Vigil Philosopher also posted, I will literally go full rabbit if he hurt anyone while under surveillance. I hate that the authorities didn't warn the sex workers he was seeing that they could potentially be meeting with a serial killer. That is kind of messed up. Like, even if they didn't know for sure, like, that is kind of messed up. I completely get that they have to remain tight-lipped about their investigation, but it feels more like that was a risk they were willing to take in order to make a case against him. I'm probably going to get some hate for saying that because I know they needed to make a case against him, but sex workers just don't usually get any respect from law enforcement in general, and it makes me really sad. They're human beings with passions, dreams, and people who love them dearly. And I will say this, like, obviously it's not the most respected profession, but for cops, especially corrupt scum cops violating human rights, for them to look down on sex workers. I mean, most sex workers are probably far more honorable than some of these terrorists wearing costumes violating people's rights left and right. I mean, there's just no comparison there. I know that's going to trigger a lot of bootlicking gifs, but whatever. Just calling it like I see it. Also, he stalked a young woman near his home recently, and she reported it to the police. I wonder if that may be one reason for the timing of the arrest. Yeah, this is pretty scary, so let's go to New York Post. Long Island woman 25 reveals recent disturbing encounter with Gilgo Beach serial killing suspect Rex Howerman. July 14th, 2023 by Deshiana Andrews and Olivia Land. A young Long Island woman revealed Friday that she had a disturbing encounter recently with Gilgo Beach murder suspect Rex Howerman earlier this month in a park, and that she was so shaken she had to file a police report. Allie, 25, who declined to provide her last name, said she was shocked to see the man nabbed in the killings was the same creep she encountered July 3rd in Brady Park. June, July, his favorite stomping time, which is just a few minutes drive from Howerman's home on 1st Avenue in Massapequa Park. Just a few minutes from his own house. I mean, this is kind of crazy the more you think about it. I was going for a bike ride over in Brady Park, and he came up behind me and he asked what time it was. Allie exclusively told the Post. He was trying to compliment me, asking me if I came here often, asking me my name. He had dirty clothes on. So he doesn't even care about not scaring away people, because this isn't a sex worker, supposedly. This is just a random girl out for a ride, and he's wearing dirty clothes and just randomly walks in. Like, it's almost like he doesn't care. Like, it seems like he was planning something, because why would he be doing that in dirty... Like, yeah, that's weird. He popped up right out of the woods. Everywhere I went in the woods, he would pop up. He would pop out somewhere, she continued. She said he kept pestering her, approaching her twice during her trip to the park. Like, this is actually really creepy. Like, she's riding around on a bike, and this is like some horror movie where he's just randomly popping out of the trees and the bushes, like, every couple minutes. This is so weird. The first time he came up behind me, I felt like breathing behind me. Then he asked me what time it was, and he saw the picture of me and my boyfriend on the phone. So he was just asking me questions, she said. Eventually, Allie said she was so upset by Howerman's conduct, she called her sister to pick her up. That's when I got my sister on the phone because I got nervous. She had to pick me up. I couldn't even go home from my bike ride, she recalled. Allie filed a police report about the encounter. 2 weeks later, she was horrified when she heard that Howerman had been arrested in connection with the deaths of at least 3 women whose remains were discovered on Ocean Parkway near Gilgo State Park, December 2010. My mom showed me the picture and I started screaming. I got so nervous because I realized that it was him, Allie told the Post. Yeah, that's a terrifying encounter, and who knows how many more of those there are. But the fact that he's doing this so close to his home, I mean, if this is legit, like, this is crazy. Visual philosopher responded, I think this had something to do with his capture as well. If they didn't arrest him after a woman simply biking in a park filed a police report about him while he was under surveillance, they look awful, especially if he hurt someone. And did they really have him in surveillance under that exact moment? Or were they just watching like his home and his workplace, and they didn't necessarily have eyes on him 24/7 like here he is stalking a park? Narrow Mud responded, I genuinely wonder how they get that info that it was him, though. Surely the woman wouldn't know his name, and to be honest, in every town in America, unidentifiable or even already identified made woman uncomfortable gets put in a file and literally nothing happens. You could report a creepy dude at the park actually breaking a law and they still wouldn't follow up. That's a good point. The vast majority of the police in that town would not have known who the killer was during the surveillance period to make the connection or realize that report needed to be passed off to the feds. I mean, unless they already knew from other information before that. They surely get reports like that constantly, and imagine that the feds had a pretty tight watch on him, but I just wonder to what degree does that entail? It seems risky to tail someone everywhere they go for months. And even if they were, they'd have to be looking at every police report made to know if there were any made about him. Well, I think maybe they would have flags for any reports made within a certain circumference of his home, because this is supposedly very close to his home. Some other responses, they said that he was still having contact with sex workers, and this is why they acted now. Our Mudd also posted, there should be some way to charge Burke as accessory to murder. With that accurate of a description, every person in his neighborhood would be 100% sure it was him. This could have been stopped the day they interviewed Amber's roommate. I mean, this is also true, though, because most serial killers are not 6'4", 6'5", with an exact identified vehicle. I mean, this is kind of crazy, though, because obviously a lot of people have a dark green Chevy Avalanche, but how many of them are a 6'4" ogre? I mean, and living so close and in the area. I mean, this is so unconscionable. I mean, it's just so tough. Like, it really is tough. So basically, within 8 weeks of the new task force, they found him. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. So basically, if there was any honest investigation done with no corruption, this really should have been solved so long ago. Other people are also speculating whether Huerman had friends in high places within the police department, and that's why he was acting so carelessly. There was also suspiciously 2 years prior to this arrest, so this would be 2021, there was a report of 2 people in Huerman, in whatever, a vehicle matching his description, parked at his exact house, doing something shady, similar to burying bodies or something of that. There was some kind of, this was being discussed 2 years ago, specifically parked at Huerman's home or right next to it. I mean, this is so crazy. So it took the new team 8 weeks to what all these other corrupt and or incompetent cops couldn't do in 10 years. I mean, this is kind of crazy, though. Like, this really is a mind-shocking case no matter how you look at it. And there's definitely weird stuff going on because there's just way too many coincidences. Also, supposedly, some people are actually saying he had his primary phone with him with his burner phone because supposedly the pings matched up. So the victim's phones pinged the same towers as his primary phone because they didn't know about the burner phones. So that's actually kind of crazy. It's also kind of insane that... Because they have the victim's phone data, so they could, I mean, I don't know how you would match it again. You wouldn't be able to just, because how could you request, you know what's kind of crazy though, would they be able to request without knowing the identity? Like, could they put a request out to cell carriers? Do you have any people that match the phone pings of these victims? And if the list came back to, let's say, 10 people, would they be able to give their info out? Obviously, they can't give the info out of, I mean, would they be able to check literally everybody's phone data? I mean, that's tough. That's tough. Apparently, the wife's hair and his hair were found in the burlap that he wrapped the girls in. So if it's both, yeah, that's pretty damning. And just as a comparison for a lot of these clueless coincidence theorists who think that, for example, Brian Kohberger in the Idaho murders case is definitely the guy and everything adds up. I mean, this is literally as opposite as you can get. Like with Rex Heuermann, I mean, things actually seem to add up here. At least on the surface. I mean, he's also that reckless, like he's calling the other victim. I mean, again, if they identify his voice, that'd be, yeah, that would be just another piece of evidence. I mean, obviously not definitive or damning, but it would just be another piece of the puzzle. Also, how many 6'4" guys with a green Chevy Avalanche live in the area? I mean, they literally could have compiled a list and showed the witnesses all the people. They could have fingered him, like, literally within a day. More than 10 years ago. I mean, this is insane. This is just absolutely insane. I mean, it's really shocking my mind more than anything. Just the sheer incompetence, corruption, all of this. It's so crazy. Here's an interesting post, though, from Dutchie. I also think, and this is just a theory I pull from my arse, if some investigators were convinced John Bitrolf is the Manorville butcher, that could explain the lack of effort, because it is quite human to think that he killed those women, dumped identical body parts at that beach, then after those body parts were never found, to dump whole bodies there in burlap at that same spot. So if they have strong evidence that Bitrolf is the Manorville butcher, it is understandable, not justifiable, but understandable that they thought we have our GB4 killer and he's never coming out of jail. I mean, I don't think so, because why would they be so sure he didn't have an accomplice? Because, and again, I'm not willing to write off Bitrolf, because some of these coincidences are just too extreme. I mean, I still keep going back to Hackett, too. So he called her pretty quickly after she went missing, either the next day or within days. That's just so weird. There's also conflicting info on the DNA and exactly how much of a match it is. But again, there seems to be other evidence other than that here. I still don't get how, like, he knows the roommate saw him and his vehicle. And he still didn't get rid of the vehicle. So they got the pings from the burner phones because he called for the mocking calls that he called the victim's family and friend. And they knew he had the Chevy Avalanche and lived in Massapequa. So they narrowed that down pretty quick, and he looked like an ogre. So I mean, how many other suspects fit this description? It's not like other cases. This is pretty solid evidence here. So Visual Philosopher posted this. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure his hairs were found on 2 of the victims or on the burlap they were wrapped in. His wife's DNA was found on 3 of the victims, which means he probably brought 3 of them to his home while his wife and children were out of town. Not necessarily, because, depending, especially if he's wearing dirty clothes that haven't been washed. I mean, obviously his wife's hair could be on those clothes. So the hairs were on the victim. They were stuck in the tape that the victims were bound with in the burlap. So yeah, it's not like they were found next to the area where they were found. That's pretty damning. Yeah, so according to the bail document, the haplogroup testing eliminates 99.69, 99.96, and 99.98% of the U.S. population, but not Heuermann or his wife, according to the bail document. Yeah, I mean, that's not definitive, because that would still leave quite a few other people. I mean, that would leave tens of thousands of people, but I guess but that's if it's even accurate, though. That's the other problem, like, what's the percent error? So, yeah, I mean, that's tough. But, again, all the other evidence is Yeah, because they couldn't find any hair roots because they could have done a lot more accurate testing with that. But who knows what other, what other evidence there is, obviously. I mean, this is just such a bonkers case, but so Standard Place posted all law enforcement had to do was drive around Massapequa Park, look for the truck, and that house would have certainly stood out. Not to mention when they saw who was driving the truck. And then they just, take that individual to the witnesses. Is this the guy? Boom. And then, get all the phone evidence and everything else. I mean, yeah, this is insane. But yeah, so this will be it for now. Like I said, I'll be doing follow-up episodes. Hope everybody found another edition of the MindShock podcast interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to at PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Make sure you're subscribed, like and share, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.